It's Luke 9, verses 10 to 17. And it's Jesus feeds the 5,000. When the apostles returned, they reported to Jesus what they had done. Then he took them with him, and they withdrew by themselves to a town called Bethsaida. But the crowds learned about it and followed him. He welcomed them and spoke to them about the kingdom of God and healed those who needed healing. Late in the afternoon, the 12 came to him and said, "Send the crowd away so that they can go to the surrounding villages and countryside and find food and lodging, because we are in a remote place here." He replied, "You give them something to eat." They answered, "We only have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, unless we go and buy food for all this crowd." About 5,000 men were there. But he said to his disciples, "Make them sit down in groups of 50 each." The disciples did so, and everyone sat down. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke them. Then he gave them to the disciples to distribute to the people. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over.
When I was at college, we would have deadlines where we would have to hand in our homework. And I was there for several years, so I don't know. Many of these deadlines came and passed. And I've always remembered that one of them was in February. And I got my work done by the end of the Christmas holidays. Yeah, so by early January, I'd done all the work. And so when everybody else was running around trying to get their essays in for the February deadline, I was so calm. I would sort of wander around, yeah, mine are done. Yeah, I'm just going to have a cup of tea. I mean, I wouldn't have had a cup of tea, but you know what I mean. I was very relaxed. Now, that was the only one of all the deadlines where I managed to get my work done early. All the other ones, I was right at the last minute. I was staying up very late at night. In fact, some nights I didn't go to bed at all because I was trying to just write essays and things to get them in to the deadline. And I remember one where everybody had finished their work and they were playing cricket outside and having a lovely time, and I could see it from my window, but I was still had to just keep writing, and I couldn't go and join them because the deadline was tomorrow. Okay, so sometimes, does anybody know the motto for the Scouts? Be prepared. Is it still the motto for the Scouts? It always was. Be prepared. Okay, it's good, isn't it, to be prepared? I managed it once. Okay. I'm quite a last-minute person, so I don't manage it very often. But I've always remembered that time that I did manage it. It felt great. It's good. It's good to be prepared. Now, back in the previous story, which actually John Crawford preached to us quite a few weeks ago now, Jesus sent the disciples out on a mission. This is at the beginning of Luke chapter 9. And he says, "Take nothing for the journey. No staff, no bag, no bread, no money, no extra shirt." Now, does that sound like good preparation? To take nothing with you at all? Has anybody ever been on holiday and just taken nothing with them? Okay. Have you ever gone to school and not taken anything with you? Okay, no, it's good to take things with you. So why does Jesus say, take nothing with you? What do we think? Doesn't seem like good advice. Why does Jesus say that then? Take nothing with you. What do we think? Well, sometimes we just have to go and trust God. Okay? And sometimes we just rely on him. Now that In fact, we should rely on him all the time, but the Bible also does talk about being a good worker. It talks about being diligent. So the Bible doesn't say that we shouldn't be prepared or that we shouldn't work in advance or do things properly. On the contrary, there are lots of verses where the Bible says we should. But sometimes Jesus says some things like this to remind us that really we rely on God. My wife Liz, she felt at one time in her life called to go and be a missionary. She felt called to go to Bangladesh. Okay, and she went with a mission group called WEC. That's their name, WEC. And she said, she went to speak to them and said, I feel called to go to Bangladesh, and I think the Lord is telling me to go with you guys. And so WEC said, well, that sounds great. We'd like to work with you on this and explore it some more, but you're going to have to train. And Liz says, yeah, that's fine. I want to train. And they said, would you like to train in New Zealand? And Liz said, would I? I'd love to train in New Zealand. And they said, great. It will just cost you a few £1,000s, and you can do that, and it will be part of your study. It will be a great time of fellowship with other missionaries, and you can really discern what God is asking you to do with your life, because that's nice for us to ask God, what does he want us to do with our lives? Okay. Now, can you think what the problem might have been? A few £1,000s. She didn't have it. She said to Wick, sorry, that sounds great, but I don't have a few £1,000s. Do you know what they said? Trust God. They said, tell a few people what you're doing and trust God. Well, the weeks went by and Liz didn't have enough money, and the months rolled by and Liz didn't have any money, and September was coming when she was going to go, and she didn't have the money. And then with just a couple of weeks to go, guess what happened? She had the money. The money came in. She didn't earn it. It came as gifts and bequests and support money, and she was able to go. And she just had to trust God and rely on him to provide what she needed to do his work. Have you ever been in a situation like that where actually you've just have to trust God? You've come more or less to the end of your own resources, and you just have to trust God. Now, remember the disciples, Jesus said to them, take nothing with you, no staff, no bag, no bread, no money, no extra shirt. And they went and they had a lot of success on their little mission. So now let's see what the disciples have learned with this story of the feeding of the 5,000. Because Jesus just wanted a bit of time with his disciples. He was just going to teach them a few things more that they needed to know. But the crowds, they found out where Jesus was going, and they all followed him. So what he hoped would just be a few disciples, an intimate teaching session with them, ended up being hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people all coming to him. Did he send them away? No. Did he say, office hours are 9 till 5? You come back at 9 tomorrow, and please don't come at 1 o'clock because it's lunchtime? Did he say that to them? No, he didn't. Lots of people that came with great need, with sickness, in need of great help, Jesus would help them. He would point them in the right direction. He would heal their sicknesses. Okay, and he really cared for the people that came. Now, this is what the disciples said. Late in the afternoon, the 12 came to him and said, send the crowd away so that they can go to the surrounding villages and countryside and find food and a place to stay, because we're in a remote place here. There isn't a Lidl or a McDonald's here. So send them away so they can go and find some food to eat. And Jesus says, you give them something to eat. Okay. Oh, how would you have felt when you heard those words? You give them something to eat. Now, bearing in mind, by the way, he's just said to them, go on mission and don't take anything with you. And they've done that, and it's worked out quite well. This is their response. This is what they say. We've only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Should we go and buy food for all this crowd? Now, I don't know where they're going to find the money to buy all this food, nor do I know where the local Tesco Express is for them to go and buy this food. But again, they're thinking, what do we need with us? How do we prepare for this task? Who's going to make the shopping list? Where's the best place to go and get the stuff? How are we going to do this? But that's not what Jesus is getting at. Again, it's this, now who are you relying on here? And they've got Jesus right there in front of them. He's right there. They can see him. Okay, we generally can't see Jesus. At this point, they can see him. The Lord of all is right there in front of them. But they're still thinking, okay, we're going to have to go and get some food. How are we going to do this? How can we use our resources to feed everyone? But the Lord is right there, right in front of them, okay? It's his resources that we need, right? It's his resources we need. So, this is what he do. He says, he says, sorry, I've lost my place. The disciple, have them sit down in groups of about 50 each. And this is my favorite bit. The disciples did so, and everybody sat down in groups of 50. There's probably less than 50 here, but these are the kinds of groups that people sat down in. Okay? Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke them. Then he gave them to the disciples to distribute to the people. Now that's the bit that I would like to see. Jesus takes the bread and fishes, prays, and now gives it to the disciples. This is the bit that I want to see. When they get the basket of the 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and they see 5,000 people in groups of 50s before them, and then they look at their loaves and fishes, and then they look at the 5,000 people. How do you think they're feeling there? Worried? Yeah? Any other possible responses?
Only going to get a crumb each.
Only going to get a crumb each? You've got to be joking. Okay? It's nothing to do with me. It's his idea. What kind of things are they thinking at that moment? They take the 5 loaves, they turn around, and now they're going to feed the multitude. Okay? What I like about it is they did it. The story doesn't tell us exactly how they were feeling in that moment. We just have to guess. We don't know if they were full of faith or full of doubt. We don't know for sure. But they did it. And that's a good lesson for us. Sometimes when our faith isn't very strong, we can still be obedient. We can still do the things that God has asked us to do, even if we're not quite sure how it's going to work out, because maybe our faith isn't so strong at the moment, but we can still do what he says. If your faith isn't very strong, obedience is a good substitute for that. And you can still do that. And the disciples did it. And what they found, do you know what they found? What did they find? You know the story? It's told in all 4 Gospels, this story. What happened?
They all ate it.
Everybody ate. Everybody was full. This is 5,000 men plus the women and children. Okay? Everybody ate. Everybody was full. And there was leftovers. Okay? How good is that? God just doesn't supply our need. He supplies it abundantly. Okay? There was leftovers. Okay? And that's what they found. Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
Okay, so a couple of things that it tells us, I think, this story. One is that God cares about what we need. Okay? It really makes sense that he does. Okay? So this is the God who, when we were lost, sent Jesus to save us. Okay? It's like he bought us. It's like Jesus paid the price on the cross, and in doing that, it's like he bought us. He saved us. He rescued us from our sins. So the God that would do that for us would probably also look after us. Does that make sense? It would be very strange if God would do all that for us on the cross, save us, rescue us, buy us, claim us to be his, and then not really take any interest in our lives and our material needs and what we need to get by. Would that be a bit strange? Yeah? Yeah? God isn't like that. The Bible tells us, would a mother and father give us a snake or a stone? No, they would give us what we need. How much more would God give us what we need? Okay? And he does. So God cares about us all the time. And he's interested in us all the time. And he wants to give us the things we need all the time. Okay? And so that's the first thing we see. And the second thing we see is sometimes God can make a little bit go a very long way. Isn't that brilliant? He can make a little bit go a very long way. Has anybody heard of Albert McMakin? He did, I heard about him on the Alpha course. I don't know if they still talk about him on the Alpha course, but 20 or so years ago they did. Albert McMakin worked on a farm in America, and he had one of those lovely American trucks that you see in the films. And there was an evangelist called Mordecai Ham. Okay, great name. Mordecai Ham. Sorry, that's my American accent. Okay, and he was in the area, and Albert McMakin thought, well, what could I do? And he thought, well, I'll see if some of the lads want to come in my truck and go and listen to Mordecai Ham. And so he asked around, and there weren't many, but he asked a bit more. And then a few lads came, and they came to listen to Mordecai Ham a couple of times. And one of those lads that came to listen to Mordecai Ham was called Billy Graham. Okay? And Billy Graham was 16, and he listened to Mordecai Ham, and he gave his life to Christ. And if you haven't heard of Billy Graham, he then became an evangelist, and he led thousands and thousands and thousands of people to Christ. But would he have done that if Albert McMakin hadn't thought, well, I wonder if I could get some people in my truck to go to the church? What do you think? Who knows? Maybe not. You see, just a little bit, you never know. It might go a very long way. What are the little things that we can do that God might spread them out to be much bigger? One of my heroes is a lady called Gladys Aylward. She went to school, didn't do very well. She worked as a parlour maid, and she didn't do very well in school. She wasn't very clever in that sort of academic way. And she wanted to go and be a missionary. And she went to the China Inland Mission and said, I'd like to go and be a missionary. And do you know what they said? Gladys, it's lovely what you want to do, but we just don't think you're clever enough. We just don't think you'll be able to learn the language. Okay? But she really felt that God had called her to do it. And so she got together the money and took this genuinely very dangerous journey to China to meet a person called Jeannie. And they had an inn, and they told people about Jesus. And that's what they did. And then there was a ruler in the area. They had a practice there where women would have their feet bound. They had a lot of health problems because of their tiny feet. But it was thought to be pretty, so women had to bind their feet up when they were growing so their feet didn't grow properly. Well, guess what? Gladys Aylward ended up becoming the chief foot inspector for the area. And she became a key person in bringing that practice to an end. There was occasions where she went to prisons. One time there was a huge riot in the prison. There was a guy going round with a big sword, killing everybody. And she walked in there and said, "Put that sword down." And he did. She was about this tall. Okay? And it wasn't only him who got telling off. She went to see the governors of the prison and said, "What do you think you're doing with these people? This is no way to treat human beings. You've got to look after them better." So Gladys became a prison reformer. This person who wasn't even clever enough to go to China. She was now the chief foot inspector and a prison reformer, but that wasn't even her main work. Her main work was opening up an orphanage for kids who obviously had no parents and nowhere to go. And she had over 100 kids in this orphanage, and when there was a really bad war, she led them. We could reenact it now, but we won't. But she just led them. Imagine little Gladys walking along with 100 children behind her, walking through dangerous areas, and she got them all to safety. You see how God can take an unlikely person and do amazing things. But God cares about us. He answers our prayers, and he can make the little that we give stretch a long, long way. So what is the little that we need to give at the moment? I don't know the answer to that. You guys might know the answer to that. What is the little that you need to give at the moment? Because God can make it stretch a very long way if you do. So